I now give the floor to Mr. Domenico Quirico, journalist at La Stampa. He's a close connoisseur of the Arab Spring or the Arab Springs. He lived personally the difficult experience of kidnapping, first in Libya and then in Syria. He was freed after 5 months of detention. The floor is yours.
Buongiorno a tutti.
Good morning. My job is pretty strange. What I do for a living is I travel in the territories of evil. I travel through human suffering. In those places in which God is prayed 10 times a day, and he's also cursed 10 times a day. 10 times a day he is cursed through the actions of those who invoke God. I travel to places in which the human condition has been reduced down to its most elementary condition. It's not a matter of loving, praying, building. It's a matter of surviving. Places in which millions of men have a single relationship with reality and with those around them. Their only concern is to stay alive, 1 hour after the other, 1 minute after the other, second by second. Survival. Survival. And this huge country in which God seems to have evaporated, disappeared, where God seems to be distracted and no longer thinks about man, whereas the devil builds and acts. That is a huge country indeed. I'm speaking to the forests of Nigeria and the deserts of the Middle East, Somalia, the Sahel, all places in which millions of men are forced to have a single relationship with their neighbors and with themselves, which is to survive. I was also a prisoner of this new Leviathan, the one we are facing, just 2 hours away by plane. Syria. Think of Syria. 200,000 victims. 200,000 victims. Non-combatants, not people holding machine guns. I'm talking about children, women, men, the elderly, people who were desperately trying to survive and who were swept away. They were swept away. Swept away. Yesterday, I was listening to what the Yazidi MP from Iraq was saying. I just got back from the Nineveh plain in Iraq. And that is yet another place in which the devil works through men. Because that is what evil is. Evil is what we do. It can also be what we do not do. I want to give you a different take on my very humble interpretation as a witness and as a traveler. Let's take a step back from the topic of religions or faith. Let's try to imagine that we are building, that in front of us, a new, or rather an ancient and terrible, yet new phenomenon is arising. It's a phenomenon that we in Europe are aware of, and we, in fact, were the first witnesses and victims of it. The birth of a new form of totalitarianism. The birth of a new totalitarian system. There have been excellent definitions of what totalitarianism is. And I have a very simple definition myself. Totalitarianism is a place in which man is condemned to death or condemned to suffering not because of what he does, but because of what he is. A place in which he is condemned given his identity, his passport, his ID. A condition in which he is swept away and erased because he is a Jew, because he is a member of the Yazidi community, a Christian, a Tutsi, because he is a Kulak. That is what totalitarianism is. The cancellation of man, regardless of his or her actions. And what we are seeing, what is arising before us, with the excuse of religion and faith, is this very dangerous phenomenon that we ourselves have already experimented. It used to be called race. It used to be ideology. Now it's a religion which is used and exploited, distorted, and used as an excuse to promote totalitarianism. The temptation of totalitarianism is the true danger that is arising in the places I mentioned a few minutes ago, right in front of us. There's an experience which struck me a great deal. In the past few days, a lot has been said about the murder of my colleague Foley, the American journalist. Who was the man who cut his throat? And there are a number of theories on who he may be. And the three main theories are that his killer is an Englishman, and three names were made, three identities were mentioned. And again, I'm not interested if he's really the cutthroat, the man. He may have been a physician, a singer, or a drug dealer. These are the three people he could be. Now let's ask ourselves, within our society, how important these three figures are. We have a physician, the perfect man, the savior, a man who saves others and works for others. Then singers, rappers, an idol for our teenagers. And then on the other side, drug dealers. How present are drug dealers in our societies? Those who live and thrive off of our vices. Now, one of these three people cut the throat of another human being in the name of a so-called holy war. He didn't come out of the Afghan mountains. This isn't somebody who desperately comes out of the desert in a third world that we have forgotten about and condemned to misery. This is someone who grew up around us, with us, someone who went to our schools, someone who soaked in, or should have soaked in, our principles. All the things which made Europe what it is. The birthplace of democracy and respecting one another and human rights. The sacredness of the individual as such, regardless of the God he prays or chooses not to pray, regardless of the books he reads, regardless of what he can or cannot give to society. The sacredness of the individual. All of these three people, one of these three people, one day decided to take this identity and throw it away, and decided to travel to a country and to kill other men in a country which wasn't his, because we're facing third or fourth wave immigration. And he decided to kill and be killed. That's the heart of the matter. That's the true root of the totalitarian risk. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Quirico, for your testimony. A very impressive one, because it talks about your experience. You have been a direct testimony of many types of terror. For example, what you said about Syria, but also what is very important for us is your analysis of the situation. It opens up a frightening perspective, because you speak about the appearance of a new totalitarianism which tries to annul humanity. It's a frightening perspective, because the servants of this totalitarianism are those people who live in poverty, but people who live around us, who have received the same teaching, education, cultural values. So religions can do very much and can become an answer for this. The reflection that leads is what is the answer that religions can give to this world with so many problems.